Hello YouTube, this is Chris, Kerbal Space Program .22 Career Mode. This will be part 3 of an ongoing series that I have. And this particular rocket is going to go to Minmus and then the moon. The moon was unplanned. Minmus was planned, and I had a lot more fuel than I thought I was going to have left over. So I decided to, I was going to go to Duna, but I didn't have enough, or at least the way I flew, I didn't have enough fuel to go to Duna, but I was back into a Kerbal spirit influence and decided to just go for the moon and see what I can get for science there. So this is the rocket that I used. As you can see, it's a Kerbal or Stay Put Nick, I'm sorry, probe with some solar panels on it, and then 2 Moon Goos. I didn't put a science lab on this, only due to weight. And I was going to use that orbital engine there, that's off to the left, and I decided to go with the smaller one just to get a little bit more ISP, so I had some more Delta V, which, I was going to Minmus, so the gravity there is pretty light. I wasn't really worried about having enough thrust to weight ratio, and it actually worked out well. But all right, so this is the build. I'm gonna kind of fast forward through this a little bit and get to at least orbit. And I am using MechJeb just due to the sake of speed. I am doing a couple other things while I'm doing this. So I just kind of wanted the automation. If you see my videos, I have done all this stuff before. I know people say that MechJeb is kind of a cheat, but it's really not. Even today, the pilots and astronauts are not relied upon to make all the calculations. Back in the early moon career or early space career, when we were going to the moon, I mean, a lot of those calculations were done by the pilot and kind of checked by computer or calculator. Nothing compared to what we have today. But as you go throughout the space programs, you do see a lot more automation by computers and sophisticated equipment such as that. So, I mean, in the senses, MechJeb is basically like that. It's just, makes it more efficient. And as you can see, my capsule is going, my probe is going out of control here. I don't know, at the end of this MechJeb burn, it just wants to go crazy, and it's happened a couple times, but you can smooth it out and then just move along. So I will show the setup. I used MechJeb to do the transfer to the moon, but it didn't give me an encounter, so I had to, if I used the ascending or descending node to adjust my inclination to get a better encounter, and then just fine tune it from there. So that's what you see me doing now. Alright, so I am going to do this correction burn at the ascending node, and we'll get a little bit of an encounter with Minmus. And that's what I did there. And I will, again, when I get closer, I will do another correction burn, only because I don't like the way that the apoapsis is so far out, or should I say the periapsis is so far out. I wanted it to be a lot closer, so I end up doing another correction burn and just bringing that closer together, so I wasn't as far away as it was originally planned. MechJump does great on transfers. It's just sometimes the way it hits the whether it's going to be a retrograde or a prograde orbit kind of screws it up, and then sometimes you get inclinations that are very strange. But this one wasn't too bad. Once I did that adjustment, I was able to set up eventually I was able to set up a decent orbit. And then what I did was I ended up landing on Minmus, which was kind of interesting. All right, and like I said, I set up my orbit. I changed the inclination a little bit so it was more of a equatorial orbit. I went in and did my final burn here. Got my circular orbit. Did a bunch of science while I was doing that. This is my initial approach. And now I'm doing a bunch of science while I'm in the sun. And as you can see, Minmus is definitely not shaped like a sphere, or at least not a smooth one. It is very bumpy. It's got a lot of flat areas, as you can see in the upper left side. There's a nice flat area there, and then the rest of it's pretty mountainous and rugged, but there are some flat spots. And when I decided to do a landing on Minmus, I really didn't I didn't plan on where I was going to land or anything like that. I just kind of went and burned retrograde just to bring down my trajectory to a place on Minmus somewhere. I didn't even check the map to see where it was. And this landing is actually, I'm playing it back at 10 times speed. It just took so long. What I did was make it extremely difficult for me by doing it in the night. I didn't have any light. Once the sun will go down behind these mountains, and I couldn't see where I was going. I had no idea what the altitude was of the place that I was sitting down. I didn't know if I was sitting down in a flat spot, which would be like equivalent to sea level, or if I was sitting down in a valley or on top of a mountain. I couldn't tell at all whatsoever. So I ended up just going super slow. Just kept keeping my velocity down, and then finally, I didn't even realize but I had touched down, bounced up, and then I realized that I was, right on the ground, and then ended up stopping, and I didn't do any leaning left or right, so it actually stood straight up. So, actually, one of my best landings on any celestial body, and I couldn't even see it. So I realized I was down, and then I did some science anyway, and then I waited for the sun to come up. And here comes the sun, and I happened to find out that I am on a frozen, I guess it would be a frozen lake or whatever's on that, whatever is there or was there on Minmus prior to freezing. I would assume that it's kind of a lake bed or some kind of ocean. As you can see, as I take off, I'm surrounded by mountains, so it was actually kind of a fortuitous landing and career high for me because I can't even land planes on Kerbin. But it was good, so we're going to take off, and we are going to now head back to Kerbin. As I said, I was going to see if I could transfer to Duna, but as I got closer, I made some probably incorrect burns and such, so I did not have enough delta V to get there, or I didn't think I did. So I just ended up going back to Kerbin. Here's another spin out here from MacJeb, and I set up for a transfer to the moon. So I condensed this down quite a bit, and you'll see it just kind of flies by. But as I go through, I realize I can't get to Duna, so I decide to um, go to the moon. It was a probe. It didn't have a parachute or anything, so it wasn't worth landing or trying to land. And I probably could have done it with the amount of fuel I had, but I decided not to. It's just a probe. I'm not worried about it. There's no Kerbals on board to be harmed, so I decide to go to the moon. So I'm gonna mess around with the maneuver nodes here, just kind of guessing. I'm not, I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but I definitely had to change the inclination. I ended up having to restart this from a save, and here you'll see it because I just couldn't make the inclination work. It would take too much fuel to straighten out the inclination the way I made the orbit circular. So I ended up just restarting or reloading this quick save and then setting up an inclination change here that would get me on the same plane as the moon, and then that way I could do a transfer to it. So that's what I was doing here. That's why yeah, you'll see it had reloaded, but it's going so fast now. I'm not sure if you noticed. Anyway, so this is what I did, and got the I eventually got the encounter with the moon. Messing around with the ascending and descending nodes is very helpful to try to change your. Just make sure that you get as much time as possible in the encounter. So it took a while, and I actually had to do a couple orbits. And what happened was, and it kind of pissed me off because I was doing the change and I was just using the fast forward, and I ended up going so fast that I got the encounter without even knowing that I did. I hadn't even planned on it. So all of a sudden I'm on the map looking at an encounter and I'm already on the trajectory to the moon. So I had to quickly adjust, but it ended up working. And I was able to get an orbit around the moon, do some science. And the rest of this video, I was actually just trying to get closer to to the moon, and see if I could get a different science area, but I didn't. So anyway, that was my Minmus Moon trip, and if you like it, leave a comment. If you want to see something else, leave a comment, and I'll try to get it done. And stay tuned for the next episode.